When you hear the word frequency, what comes to mind? For most people, it sounds like one of those new age woo-woo concepts, something mystical, unscientific, or too abstract to matter in real life. I get it. I used to think the same way. If someone talked about energy or vibration, I would roll my eyes and say, that's just made up. That's not practical. That's not real life. But here's what changed everything for me. I discovered that frequency is not fiction. It's physics. And once I learned to think in terms of frequencies, my entire life shifted, spiritually, mentally, and even financially. Think about it. Radio works on frequencies. Wi-Fi works on frequencies. Electricity, light, sound, all of them move in waves at certain frequencies. You may not see them with your eyes, but they are real. You can't see radio waves, but the moment you tune your device to the right station, suddenly you hear music. It was always there. You just weren't tuned in. And here's the part that blew my mind. Life itself works the same way. What you frequently see, hear, and think about becomes the frequency you're tuned into. And just like a radio, you start picking up experiences that match that frequency. Let me be very honest here. For most of my life, I didn't live on purpose. I lived on programming. I let my environment, my family, my culture, and even my problems decide my frequency. If all I saw was struggle, then struggle was all I received. If all I thought about was lack, then lack became my reality. I didn't realize that my mind was like an antenna, always picking up signals, always tuning into something. And because I wasn't intentional, I stayed stuck on the wrong channel. Here's where it gets interesting. Science has something called the reticular activating system, RAS for short. It's a filter in your brain that determines what you notice. Ever thought about buying a certain car and suddenly you see that exact car everywhere? Did the number of those cars suddenly increase overnight? No, they were always there. But your brain tuned in. That's frequency at work, and the Bible confirms this principle in its own way. Jesus said, "He who has eyes, let him see." In other words, awareness is selective. You notice what you're tuned to. Proverbs says, "As a man thinketh, so is he." Meaning, your inner frequency eventually becomes your outer reality. So let's go back to the woo-woo argument. If you ignore this principle, you may feel smarter, but you'll also stay stuck. Because whether you believe it or not, frequency is shaping your life every day. If you keep tuning into fear, negativity, and scarcity, you'll keep living it. But the moment you shift your frequency, by changing what you focus on, what you consume, who you listen to, your entire reality begins to shift too. This is why learning to think in terms of frequencies changed my life. It gave me language for something I was experiencing but couldn't explain. It made me realize that I was not powerless. I was simply tuned to the wrong channel. And once I changed the dial, new possibilities appeared that had been invisible before. So here's the challenge I want to leave you with as we begin this journey. What channel are you tuned to right now? Look at your daily life, your conversations, your thoughts. Are you tuned into problems, or are you tuned into possibilities? Because the answer to that question will reveal exactly why your life looks the way it does. And in the next part, I'll show you how the brain itself works as a frequency filter. And once you understand this, you'll never see your life the same way again. Here's where it gets even more practical. If frequency still feels abstract to you, let's break it down into something you use every single day. Your own brain. Inside your head, there's a small network of neurons called the reticular activating system, or RAS. You don't have to remember the scientific name, but you need to know what it does. The RAS acts like a filter. Out of the millions of bits of information coming at you every second, it decides what's worth noticing and what gets ignored. Think about this. Right now, as you're listening to me, your clothes are touching your skin. But until I mentioned it, you weren't paying attention. That's your RAS at work. It filters the noise so you don't get overwhelmed. But here's the thing. The filter doesn't decide on its own. It follows your focus. Whatever you've been telling your brain is important, that's what it starts highlighting. Have you ever thought about buying a red car and suddenly it feels like the entire city is full of red cars? They didn't multiply overnight. Your brain simply tuned in. The cars were always there. You just didn't see them because your frequency filter wasn't open to them. This is not magic. It's how your mind was designed. You're not seeing reality as it is. You're seeing reality as you are tuned. And that tuning is happening based on what you frequently think, see, and hear. Now, why does this matter? Because most people live blind to opportunities. Not because opportunities aren't there, but because their filter is locked on the wrong frequency. If you keep telling yourself, life is hard, there's never enough, I can't get ahead, your RAS will obediently filter out everything that doesn't match that belief. It will blind you to doors that could open. It will highlight every obstacle, every problem, every reason why you're stuck. And guess what? You'll call it reality. But the truth is, it's not reality. It's your programmed frequency. Now let me connect this to something deeper. Jesus once said, "He who has eyes, let him see." Notice, he wasn't talking to blind people. They all had physical eyes. But what he was pointing to was awareness. He was saying that seeing isn't just about what hits your eyeballs, it's about what you're tuned into spiritually and mentally. In other words, some people will walk right past the same blessing, the same opportunity, the same open door, and one person will see it while the other doesn't. Why? Frequency. The Bible also says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." That's not just a poetic line. It's describing how the internal focus of your thoughts becomes the external reality you live. What you repeatedly think and believe creates the filter through which you see the world. Let me give you a personal example. Back when I was broke and struggling, I used to only see my limitations. My whole frequency was tuned to lack. I'd go online and only see how expensive everything was. I'd walk into opportunities and only notice why they wouldn't work for me. And guess what? My life matched that frequency perfectly. But when I started studying mentors, reading books, and training my mind to focus differently, it was like a new world opened. The same city, the same people, the same environment. Suddenly I was noticing possibilities I had walked past 100 times before. This is why learning to think in terms of frequencies is so powerful. Because once you understand that your brain is working like a frequency filter, you realize your life is not being limited by what's out there. It's being limited by what you've been tuned into in here. So let me ask you, what's your RAS highlighting for you right now? Problems or possibilities? Fear or faith? Scarcity or abundance? Because whatever you've been feeding it, that's the channel you're living on. And here's the good news. Just like changing the dial on a radio, you can reprogram what you see. You can shift your frequency by changing what you focus on, what you allow into your mind, and what you choose to dwell on. In the next part, I'll take you into exactly how frequency creates energy flow, why the phrase, "where attention goes, energy flows," is not just motivational talk, but a real principle that can transform your finances, your relationships, and your future. Now that you see how your brain acts as a frequency filter, here's the next big realization. Frequency doesn't just affect what you notice, it directs where your energy flows. There's a saying you might have heard before. Where attention goes, energy flows. At first, that sounded like just another motivational line to me. But when I thought about it deeper, I realized it was a principle that runs through science, through life, and through the Bible. Think of water hitting a rock over time. One drop doesn't do much. But thousands of drops, hitting the same spot day after day, can carve valleys into stone. That's energy flowing in one direction long enough to create momentum. That's what frequency does in your life. Whatever you keep focusing on, whether it's fear, lack, or possibilities, your energy keeps flowing in that direction. Eventually, it builds momentum strong enough to shape your reality. Here's an example from everyday life. If you constantly focus on your problems in business, all your energy is drained into managing fear and stress. You start missing opportunities because your eyes are glued to what's wrong. But if you choose to focus on growth, even when the problems are still there, suddenly your energy shifts. Ideas come, solutions appear, people show up to help. The energy you put into growth builds momentum toward expansion instead of survival. Science backs this up. Your brain is designed to strengthen whatever pathways you repeat. Focus on fear long enough, and your neural pathways around fear get stronger. That's why some people seem addicted to worrying. They've trained their brains to send energy that way. But the opposite is also true. Focus on faith, gratitude, and vision long enough, and your brain wires itself to flow energy in that direction. You literally build momentum toward abundance. And this principle isn't just psychology, it's deeply spiritual. Let's go back to the Israelites in the desert. They were right on the edge of entering the promised land. But when they saw the giants, their frequency tuned to fear. Their attention went to what was impossible, not what God had promised. And because their attention went there, their energy flowed there too. Into complaining, into shrinking back, into staying stuck for 40 years. Now contrast that with Joshua and Caleb. They saw the same land, the same giants, but they tuned into a different frequency. Their eyes weren't on the giants, they were on God's promise. And because that's where their attention went, that's where their energy flowed. They were ready to move forward when everyone else was paralyzed. Eventually, they were the ones who actually entered the land. The lesson is simple but powerful. Where your focus goes, your energy follows. And where your energy flows long enough, momentum is created. This is why shifting your frequency matters. Because it's not just about what you see, it's about what you feed with your attention. If you're always tuned into negativity, you're pouring energy into building more negativity. If you're tuned into faith, you're pouring energy into building more faith. And here's something that really convicted me personally. I used to spend hours of my day focusing on distractions, scrolling, comparing, worrying, playing games that didn't matter. And guess what? My energy flowed there. No wonder I felt stuck. But when I started choosing to focus on things that built me, books, mentors, scripture, even just sitting in silence and imagining what was possible, my energy shifted. And the momentum of my life began to shift with it. It's like electricity. It's invisible, but once you plug in, the power flows. If you plug your attention into fear, the current of your life will light up fear. If you plug your attention into faith, the current of your life will light up purpose, growth, and possibility. So let me ask you, where is your energy flowing today? Is it being poured into worry, complaints, and distractions? Or is it being poured into vision, purpose, and creation? Because here's the truth, energy doesn't lie. You can say you want success, but if your energy is flowing into distractions, your results will reflect that. You can say you want abundance, but if your attention is stuck on scarcity, your life will echo that. The good news is, you can redirect it. You can retune your frequency by intentionally choosing where your attention goes. And once you hold it there long enough, momentum begins to work in your favor. And in the next part, I'll show you something practical. How most of what you see isn't even chosen by you. It's been programmed by your environment. But the moment you reprogram what you allow yourself to see, you can shift your entire frequency upward. Here's the part that hit me hardest. Most of what you see in your daily life isn't even chosen by you. It's been programmed into you by your family, by school, by culture, and by media. Think about it. As kids, we don't choose the environment we grow up in. If you grew up in a house where money was always a problem, then every time the bills were due, every time you heard adults arguing about finances, you were being programmed with a frequency of lack. If you grew up hearing we can't afford that, money doesn't grow on trees, rich people are greedy, then guess what? Those words became part of your frequency. Without realizing it, you inherited a filter that tunes you into scarcity. School added another layer. Most schools don't teach you how to think, they teach you how to obey. They train you to memorize facts, follow instructions, and wait for permission. It's a system that rewards compliance, not creativity. And then we wonder why as adults we're afraid to take risks, to build, to create. It's because our frequency was programmed to stay in line, not to break free. And then there's media. The endless scrolling, the constant comparison, the news headlines that shout fear and disaster every day. If all you ever see are failure stories, corruption, chaos, and fear, your mind tunes into that frequency. And soon, you start living as if that's the only reality available. This is why I say most people are not living by choice. They're living by programming. The frequency they're tuned into was decided long before they ever had a say. But here's the good news. Just like any program, it can be rewritten. You can intentionally reprogram what you see, and by doing that, you shift your frequency upward. How? Start with your environment. Change what you allow your eyes and ears to consume. If you're constantly watching shows, videos, or posts that glorify struggle and failure, you're feeding yourself that frequency. Replace them with stories of people who are growing, who are building, who are walking in faith and purpose. Change the books you read. Instead of endlessly consuming entertainment, start consuming wisdom. A single book with the right message can retune your frequency. Bob Proctor once said, "Reading the right book can change your entire life." That's not an exaggeration. Books, when repeated, program your subconscious in ways daily distractions never will. Change the people you spend time with. If you're surrounded by people who only complain, gossip, and pull you down, you'll find yourself tuned into their frequency. But when you surround yourself with people of vision, of faith, of creativity, your filter shifts. You start noticing what they notice. You start believing what they believe. This isn't about pretending problems don't exist. It's about choosing which signal you'll let dominate your awareness. The Bible puts it clearly. Faith comes by hearing. That means whatever you see and hear repeatedly programs your spirit. If faith comes by hearing, then fear also comes by hearing. What are you hearing more of every day? What are you seeing more of? That's what's shaping your frequency. I remember when I first applied this, I realized that my entire social media feed was filled with noise, people arguing, bad news, distractions. No wonder I felt drained. So I made a decision. I unfollowed anything that didn't build me. I filled my vision with success stories, wisdom, and testimonies of faith. Slowly, my frequency shifted, my energy changed, my focus sharpened, and opportunities that were invisible before started becoming visible. You can do the same. You don't have to let your programming run on autopilot. You can take control. Start small. One book, one new voice in your ear, one intentional change in your environment. Over time, those small shifts compound, and your entire frequency gets rewritten. So let me challenge you with a question. If faith comes by hearing, then what are you hearing every day? If vision comes by seeing, then what are you seeing every day? Because whether you realize it or not, that is programming your future. And this leads us to the most important part of this entire message, aligning your frequency with your destiny. Because it's not enough to just reprogram, you have to make sure the frequency you're tuned to matches the life God designed for you. Here's the final piece of the puzzle, aligning your frequency with your destiny. Because it's one thing to reprogram what you see, to shift from fear to faith, from lack to abundance. But the real breakthrough comes when your frequency matches the very life God designed you to live. That's when things stop feeling forced. That's when life starts flowing. Think about Genesis. From the very beginning, God's command wasn't about survival. It was about expansion. Be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth, subdue it, and have dominion. That's not just poetry. That's your blueprint. Fruitfulness is the frequency you were created to operate on. Multiplication is your natural state. Dominion, living with authority, not fear, is your original design. The problem is, most people's frequency is tuned to the opposite. Instead of fruitfulness, they're tuned to barrenness. Instead of multiplication, they're tuned to barely making it. Instead of dominion, they're tuned to defeat. And so their life reflects a frequency that was never God's plan. Here's the shift. Abundance is not something God has to create for you. It's already around you. Just like Hagar in the desert, crying because she thought she and her son would die of thirst, when all along there was a well right beside her. She didn't need God to drop water from heaven. She needed her eyes opened. She needed to align her awareness with the provision that was already there. That's what aligning frequency with destiny is about. It's opening your spiritual eyes to see what was always present. It's tuning into the channel of fruitfulness instead of fear, of creation instead of consumption. Now, how do you actually do this? It's not complicated, but it requires consistency. One way is through gratitude. Gratitude is not just being polite, it's a frequency tuner. When you consistently see and acknowledge blessings in your life, your frequency rises. Suddenly, what looked like not enough becomes more than enough. Gratitude reprograms your RAS to look for abundance. Another way is through vision. Practical tools like vision boards aren't just trendy ideas. They are ways to fix your eyes on the frequency of what God has promised. The Bible says, write the vision, make it plain. Why? Because when you see it repeatedly, Your frequency aligns with it. You stop just wishing and start believing. Then there's prayer and meditation. This is not about begging God to change his mind. It's about aligning your spirit with his promises. When you pray his word, when you meditate on truth, you are literally retuning your inner frequency to match his design. You stop vibrating on fear and start vibrating on faith. And here's the beautiful thing. When you frequently see the life God has for you, you start living in that frequency now. Your energy, your actions, your relationships begin to flow with it. And eventually, your external reality catches up. This isn't instant. It's not snap your fingers and everything changes. But it is inevitable. Because frequency creates momentum. And once your momentum is aligned with God's destiny, nothing can stop it. Let me put it this way. When you tune your radio to the right station, you don't have to force the music to come out. It just plays. That's what destiny feels like when your frequency is aligned. You don't have to force opportunities. You don't have to chase blessings. They flow because you're finally tuned into the signal they've always been broadcasting. So let me challenge you right now. Ask yourself, what do I frequently see? What do I hear? What do I feed my mind and spirit every single day? Because whatever that is, that's your frequency. And whatever your frequency is, that's your future. You are not powerless. You are not stuck. The frequency of fruitfulness, multiplication, and dominion is already available to you. The only question is, will you tune into it? Because once you do, you'll realize abundance was never missing. It was always here, waiting for you to align.